Welcome. My name is Michael Roseman. I'm the Honorary Consul of the Federal Republic of Germany here in Brisbane. And I very much like to welcome you to our Brisbane German-Australian Business Day and overall the Brisbane German Week. I'd like to start by acknowledging, of course, our distinguished guest, the Right Honourable Lord Mayor of Brisbane, Councillor Adrian Schrinner. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Christoph Freyer von Spessart, who is the Executive Director of the German-Australian Chamber of Industry and Commerce, who joins us, hopefully right now online, from Sydney. And also like to acknowledge Mr. Paul Martin, the CEO of Trade and Investment Queensland, who hopefully joins us as well right now online, I assume from 1 William Street. And of course, always at these events, I like to welcome my diplomatic grandfather, Detlef Sulzer. Fantastic to have you with us, and I appreciate your ongoing mentoring and support. Thank you, Detlef. Dear participants here at QET, across Australia or the early risers in Germany, thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, I like to start by keeping with the spirit of reconciliation, acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are meeting and pay my respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge the very important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people continue to play within the QET community. Welcome to day 8 of Brisbane German Week, and welcome to what is already the 5th German Business Day. And despite the changes and constraints this year, we're very, very eager to make it, like in the previous years, an even better experience. And I think in many cases, that's what happened over the last 8 days. So we kicked off on the 1st of October at the Queensland Parliament House. We had a quite vivid conversation around the secrets of success of Germany's industrialization and digitization since the Second World War. The day after, we celebrated 30 years since the wall came down with a distinguished movie at the State Library. And on the 3rd of October, you didn't just only see the bridges, Victoria and Astoria Bridge in the German flags, but you also could attend 30 interviews with 30 distinguished Australians who spent time in Germany, conductors and musicians and others among them. And what we started literally in Brisbane, lighting up buildings, was continued in Canberra, Flinders, in Melbourne, and also in Sydney. So it's always nice when Melbourne and Sydney replicate ideas that come out of Brisbane. We had a German language competition that kicked off on Monday, and we expect more than 2,000 students across the whole of Australia will take part in this competition and demonstrate their abilities when it comes to learning German. And on Tuesday night, new for me as well, we had an entire German cooking show at Miele, at the Lumiere studio, and also we welcomed one of your counselors who did his best with some German recipes. So it was highly entertaining for all of us. And I very much hope that you can join us for the German Arts Evening on Friday and the Science Innovation Day that will occur on Monday. I also like to warmly welcome you at the Peter Koldrake Education Precinct where you're right now. This building won a couple of awards in July for its education architecture, its interior design, its sustainability architecture. And if you have a moment, go down to level 1 and see the sphere. It's a 5-meter diameter globe, 3.5 tons, heavy, globally unique, and made up of more than 7 million 3mm pixels, visualizing things that you otherwise couldn't visualize. And the idea of QT was to create a space that creates lifelong memories, and that's what we try to achieve this afternoon as well. In case of an emergency, of course, stay calm, follow the well-posted exit signs, and wait at the evacuation space for further instructions. And restrooms are just down 10 meters on this floor. Needless to say, we are living in a COVID time, so just make sure that you maintain physical distance where possible. At the opening night of the Brisbane German Week last week, I was asked to talk about the secrets of success around Germany's industrialization. And I said 2 of the 4 factors were decisiveness and the smart use of technology. And I also believe that despite all the tragic impact that the World War was a catalyst for a lot of innovation, and often we come out of crisis in a much stronger fashion. 75 years later, in 2020, we're in a very similar environment. So we are in the middle of a crisis. And again, we look at how do we get out of this not as good as before, but stronger. And that's what we call leapfrogging in times of crisis. And I believe while we in the previous years talked about the data economy, the Internet of Things, and about trust, we never had a more contemporary topic than today. And today, the idea is very much to uncover secrets of success. We witness organizations that scale, that convert, that accelerate in a scale that was previously unknown. And we like to uncover not just what they've done, but how they've done this so we can continue excelling when the crisis is gone. As the German Honorary Consul, I'm delighted to be surrounded by inspirational individuals and organizations. And today is co-organized together with the Queensland chapter of the German-Australian Chamber of Industry and Commerce, the German-Australian Business Association, the German-Australian Business Women's Association, and for the very first time with the German-Australian Business Council, headquartered in Germany, in Berlin, Munich, and Frankfurt. I very much hope that a number of individuals from the GACIC in Germany can join us on what is their morning. I also like to thank, of course, our partners of today, Siemens Australia, Stiebel Altron, and Philips Dictation for your tremendous support, and of course, the Brisbane City Council and QT. Meine Damen und Herren, it's now my absolute pleasure to introduce the Right Honourable, the Lord Mayor of Brisbane, Councillor Adrian Schinner, for his welcome message. Adrian Schinner served the Brisbane community for more than 15 years now, including 8 years as a Deputy Mayor, and he was sworn in on the 8th of April 2019, which is to the dot 1.5 years ago. And at the time of the appointment, you were the youngest Lord Mayor Brisbane ever had, so well done. What you might not know is that Adrian has a Bachelor of Arts from UQ and qualified to fly solo aircraft in the age of 16, which is quite impressive. If you take those 3 features, so being dedicated to your city, to the place that you lead, demonstrating the creativity that comes with an arts education, and being able to look forward to see what's coming as a pilot, you've got the 3 features that I think we need as leaders to leapfrog in times of crisis. So this is why we picked our Lord Mayor. We're delighted to have you here. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Right Honourable, the Lord Mayor of Brisbane, the Councillor Adrian Schinner this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Guten Tag. Thank you very much, Professor Roseman, for that kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to join you here and to conduct the official welcome. I want to start also by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land and pay my respects to our traditional and Indigenous owners of Brisbane. To the different organisations that are supporting the events of German Week, and particularly this event, I say thank you for making this possible. It is really now more important than ever that we come together and keep in touch, but more importantly, to learn from each other at a time that is rapidly changing. You've probably gathered from my surname that I have some German heritage myself. So my story started when in a place called Dortmund, when my dad, as a young 20-something man who loved adventure, decided to go to the other end of the world, to a place that he'd never been, that he'd read about in books, not knowing anyone and not having any money. And so he arrived in Australia with nothing, and knowing nobody, and as I said, not speaking English. He still can't really speak English too well. No, he can. But that story it has some interesting links with the story of Queensland, because some of you in the room will know that Queensland's story right from the early days was a story that involved German heritage. And it was the very first free settlers in Queensland who were Germans. And they arrived around the Nunda area, and they established a settlement there known as German Station at the time. And they were very critical in the early days of the development of our state. And the weave of German heritage goes all the way through Queensland's heritage. We were just discussing earlier about Government House at Fernberg being German built, and yet another example of those really strong links going back to the beginning of Queensland settlement by non-Indigenous people. And so it gives me great honour as someone with German heritage, but was born here to conduct the official welcome. But what is more interesting than that is the topic of the discussion this afternoon, which I think is so critical and particularly insightful given the times that we're in. The topic of how we can be anti-fragile. I was particularly excited to see that topic on the agenda, and it is particularly relevant. There are a lot of different events and conferences and gatherings that happen, but this topic is so relevant to what we're all facing right now. Brisbane as a city has obviously been through its fair share of challenges in the past. And whether it's the natural disasters like the 2011 flood, whether it's other natural events, or whether it's man-made, or whether it's financial, or whether it's a health crisis like the one that we're facing now, health and economic crisis. We have traditionally aimed to be a resilient city. But when we talk about anti-fragility, it is different to resilience. And I think that's an important topic for us to consider this afternoon. Resilience is about taking the hit and bouncing back to where you were. Anti-fragility is about taking the hit and coming back better and stronger. And so I know from today on, I'll be changing my language about where our city wants to be going forward, because I would have, to this point, said, I want Brisbane to be a resilient city. I don't. Sure, I do want us to be resilient in the respect that we can take the hit, but I want us to be an anti-fragile city, one that bounces back stronger. And if you were anywhere in Australia right now, you would want to be in Queensland and you would want to be in Brisbane. And Queensland is a great state with a diverse economy across a range of different sectors. But Brisbane is the most diverse part of that economy. There are some parts of our economy around the state which rely very heavily on one or two sectors. Brisbane has that diversity. And in a situation like this, where we're facing challenges, and in a situation where we have fared significantly better than other parts of Australia and other parts of the world, we should not have the ambition to be resilient, but to be anti-fragile and to bounce back stronger. And so my ambition for the city is that going forward. It's something that I probably haven't articulated that way until today, but in gathering my thoughts for the welcome today, that is exactly where we want to be as a city. And that is exactly why I'm so excited to see the topic of discussion today. Brisbane, our businesses, our community are bouncing back. And in so many respects that I've seen, they're bouncing back stronger. They're learning, they're adapting, they're changing quickly. And because we live in such a competitive global environment, the faster we bounce back and the stronger we bounce back, the further ahead of the pack that we get. And so it is already evident to me that, and it is unfortunate what has happened in Victoria. There's no doubt about that. And our hearts and thoughts are with Victorians. But out of hardship comes opportunity, and that opportunity is already being taken up actively by Brisbane and by Queensland. And it is week after week that we are seeing people wanting to move here from interstate. People who might work in a large company in Melbourne or Sydney wanting to transfer to the Brisbane office. That is happening right now. People are buying property in Brisbane sight unseen on realestate.com and other websites. They are wanting to be here. They're wanting to be part of it. We are seeing the international entertainment and movie industry wanting to base themselves here because we are comparatively better off. There is a whole range of opportunities for our city and for our state that are here right now. And I know that local businesses and also German businesses are going to be critical in that process. There are opportunities for every business in Brisbane. And it is the ones that are anti-fragile, the ones that are nimble, and the ones that adapt that will have incredible opportunities ahead. So thank you for bringing this together. Thank you for the thought and consideration that has been put into the topic of discussion. Thank you to the other speakers who will give their examples of how they've adapted, how they've grown, and how their organisation has been anti-fragile. I'm very excited to see the outcomes and the learnings of today, and it is a great honour to welcome you all. To the guests that are watching from overseas, we are looking forward to welcoming you as soon as we can have international travel again. Brisbane is a powerhouse of a city. Brisbane is a city that is unashamedly pro-growth and pro-economic development and pro-opportunity. And we also happen to have the best lifestyle in Australia as well. So please, I look forward to seeing you all soon. If you're not from Australia and you're watching online, you are welcome here. And there's a great network of local German businesses, German community representatives that are here to welcome you and to make you feel at home here, and also to support your integration into the local business community. I would say that the other thing that I'm particularly proud of as well is, it's a small thing and it's a personal thing, is that today is my daughter's 8th birthday, Octavia. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a German name like my son Wolfgang, but when I asked her what she would like to do for her birthday, I was expecting maybe a party at home. I was expecting maybe the kids' visit to McDonald's, but no. She asked to go to the German club with the family. So that made me very proud. We're passing on that German heritage, but if my 8-year-old wants to go to the German club, then that's okay with me, and I'm very proud. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here today. Thank you to those online, and I wish you the best for this, what will be, I know, a really valuable discussion going forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Lord Mayor. I appreciate this. I celebrated my birthday yesterday with a dinner at a nice Brisbane restaurant, so it's good to see the mutual relationships. And you talked about the history between Germany and Brisbane and the anti-fragile city and future we have in the years to come. So I look forward to adding more anti-fragility also to the Brisbane-German relationship. Anti-fragility is what we see in our conversations and presentations. So we are much more familiar now with online conversations than we were 12 months ago. And our levels of comfort to have these conversations across Zoom, Skype, or WebEx has increased dramatically and opened up entire new channels of conversations. And this is what we do right now. So I very much like to welcome Christoph Freier von Spessart, the Executive Director and Board Member of the German-Australian Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Christoph took over this role in May this year and is joining us from Sydney. He has a comprehensive background in the energy sector and also was the Chief of Staff in the German Parliament between 2004 and 2009. So we are very, very grateful for the strong relationship we have with Thea and the entire team of the Queensland chapter. And we're absolutely delighted now, Christoph, to have you here with us. Warm welcome from Brisbane to Sydney, and I'd like to give you some stage time here, and we are delighted to have you here. So thank you so much for joining us, Christoph.
Thank you very much, dear Professor Rosemann, and I hope that you can understand me well, that the audio is working, so I believe yes. Dear all, dear Lord Mayor Adrian Schrinner, dear Professor Rosemann, dear colleagues from our Queensland chapter of the German Chamber, and of course, dear all participants, it is a great pleasure and honor for me to be with you, at least virtually now. And I can fully understand what Lord Mayor Adrian Schrinner just said, that so many people want to be in Brisbane. I want to be in Brisbane too, and the original plan was really to be with you today. Unfortunately, as you all know, that's not possible for the time being, but please let me send a very warm and happy birthday to you, Professor Rosemann, and also to your daughter, dear Lord Mayor. Actually, that's funny because my youngest son will turn 8 on Saturday. And we wanted to be, as I said, in Brisbane for that time. We are at the moment on leave, but we couldn't make it up to Queensland. So having said that, maybe a few words to me. I was kindly introduced already. I took over, you know, I'm the persified leapfrogger, so to say, because originally we were on the way back to Germany, to be honest. I was 10 years with a German Mittelstand company, heading the insulation branch here, working with, not heading, but working with the management team in Knauf Insulation, and working especially in the energy efficiency sector, always on the interface of politics and business. After 10.5 years with this family company, Knauf, I thought, okay, I was working with many chambers before, and I thought, okay, this is a great opportunity to change from the customer side to the chamber side. So here I am, started on the 1st of May, and I found a fantastic, motivated team, very agile, very anti-fragile, and we have now really started a whole push to actually get in touch with our members and with the German Australian business community. Thank you for inviting me to address you for this 5th already German Australian Business Day. I think you've done a terrific and amazing job every year to bring this together. And obviously the special focus this year couldn't be more timely and better, knowing that, of course, in Germany and in Europe, we do have to cope with the rising case numbers again, but that again will be another proof of anti-fragility. So please let me thank all of you who were involved in the organization, especially, of course, I would like to mention Tia, Michaela from our Queensland chapter for organizing this so brilliantly. Obviously, if we look ahead, and I would like to add to the anti-fragile view, and I really like it that it's more than just resilience. I see so many positive signs, and I'm optimistic about our bilateral relationship, really. And I would like to fix that on 3 points. The first is really the energy collaboration has never been closer. And I think particularly it's strong on the area of hydrogen. It's extremely promising what's happening over there, or happening in both countries, regarding hydrogen. We just had a joint energy working group between Germany and Australia last week, where we agreed that there will be a major feasibility study on hydrogen, on supply and demand between both countries. There is a new platform which we are now considering to pull together to bring actually good cases, projects, and all sorts of different input together. That's an initiative we want to organize as a chamber. So we do have, I think, a very, very promising development in that area. But I think there's also more. There's the budget shows that obviously advanced manufacturing will be an extremely important focus, not just for the Australian, but also, of course, for the Australian government, but yet again also for Germany, where advanced manufacturing is a vital core of the backbone of the German positive economic situation. Then again, the other optimistic sign is obviously the free trade agreement. From what we hear and see, the negotiations just went into virtual, which is a great example of leapfrogging. Again, they're progressing well, and we hope that they are concluded successfully by this time next year. And then again, that will be a great push for the bilateral business relations. Let me lastly say that we as a chamber also are here not just for the whole German Australian business community, but especially for our members. We have a lot of interesting new initiatives which we brought, most of them digital, but also a new online tool where we can deliver better value for our customers. And at the moment, as we talk about anti-fragility, we are using the crisis to actually get a strategy update where we have a stronger focus on those growing and promising industries to even better identify business opportunities between both countries. So having said all that, and with a look on the time, let me close by wishing you just a fantastic further business day. Please be assured that I will be sitting on one of the first planes to Brisbane, and I surely mean that because the last role I had within Knauf, the headquarter was in Honorary. So I got to know Brisbane quite well, and I really, really liked it. So I think I will be hopefully soon there. I know that the date of 1st of November is a bit challenged as of today, but let's see. And I heard that later in November it should be even better in Brisbane. So I would love to meet many of you in person, obviously. And once again, have a wonderful business day. Kindest regards from Sydney. And once again, you're showing that all of you, you're showing that you're anti-fragile and are perfect examples of leapfrogging. Thank you very much once again for organizing and for having me. And now I send my best regards and have a wonderful program. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Fantastic to have such a change optimist in this role. And the idea of hydrogen is also covered in 2 events next week on Monday and on Wednesday. So go to our German Week homepage to see more. So thank you so much. We can't wait to see you in Brisbane. We really will be delighted to have you here. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I mentioned Thea and Michaela, and it gives me now great pleasure to introduce the MC of today's event, Michaela John. Michaela has 20 years of experience as a marketing and communication specialist, and right now is the marketing operations manager for Siemens, a role you have for 2.5 years now. But today, Michaela is in particular here because of her role as the vice chair of the Queensland chapter of the German-Australian Chamber for Industry and Commerce. You're very familiar with a variety of industries and the art of storytelling. So ladies and gentlemen, you're in very safe hands, and I've got no doubt you will enjoy the next hours of your life, in particular because of Michaela's fine moderating role. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the MC of today, Michaela John.
Thank you, Michael, and belated happy birthday. I had no idea, so I need to note that in my calendar. So hello and welcome to this year's Business Day. My name is Michaela John or Michaela John, whatever works easier for you. And it's my pleasure to guide you through today's program. This year is the first time this event can be attended in person and also online. So we have actually several locations throughout Australia and as well as in Germany, hopefully attending these sessions. So everyone is very, very welcome. A special thank you joining us online, not just across Australia, but also in Germany. So Guten Morgen nach Deutschland an dieser Stelle. To make the sessions as interactive as possible, please use, when you're on your screen, the Q&A feature for all your questions. Whenever you pitch your questions, all the speakers will address them at the end, ideally, of their presentations. And hopefully we have time for all of them to be answered. I also would like to thank everyone who is involved in the organization of this event, not just the involved parties, which Michael already mentioned, and the sponsors, Siemens, Stiebel Eltron, and Philips. But a particular thank you to all the volunteers who keep coming and helping to make this possible. So a very special thank you here. The theme for this business day was inspired by the book from Nassim Taleb, Anti-Fragile, Things That Gain from Disorder. He is the best-selling author who also wrote The Black Swan. He reveals how to thrive in an uncertain world. What Taleb has identified and called anti-fragile is that category of things that not only gain from chaos, but need it in order to survive and flourish. The anti-fragile is beyond resilient and robust. The resilient resists shocks and stays the same. The anti-fragile gets better and better. So here we are in the middle of a pandemic, which keeps challenging organizations all over the world. Many crumbled, some adapted and pivoted, and some were simply in the right place. Hello, Netflix. Companies that benefit from people who are stuck at home have flourished in the past months. Today, we hear from organizations in different sectors, Germany as well as Australia, which leapfrogged and are dubbed anti-fragile. The ones which gained from the stressor COVID-19. So it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Paul Martin. He is the CEO of Trade and Investment Queensland. and joined earlier this year the Queensland COVID-19 Response and Recovery Task Force. So who else could be more appropriate to actually present today? Please join me in welcoming Paul Martin, hopefully.
Well, thanks very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And look, I'll begin also by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, whether in person or digitally, and acknowledge their elders past and present. And I do want to say thank you and happy birthday to Michael Roseman, who's a great friend of TIQ. It's good to hear the Lord Mayor again speaking and to hear his optimism about the city. And Christoph, you've raised a number of points that I do want to return to later in my talk today. So if I can, just to pick up on my background, so Trade Investment Queensland is responsible for is Queensland Government's global business agency. So our role is to attract inward investment to Queensland, but also to promote bilateral trade relationships internationally and to encourage export from Queensland. And, you know, this crisis clearly has been a significant impact for my organisation. For the last 6 months, I've been heading the government's COVID-19 task force. And, you know, when you talk about fragility involves being tested, and the governments around the world, and that includes here in Queensland, have been tested by this pandemic, and by no means are we out of the wood yet. I do want to talk a little bit about Queensland's achievement in managing COVID-19, what that I think has revealed about us as a state and why we've done well, but then start to talk a bit about how we build back better, to pick up on the Lord Mayor's theme. So when we think about Queensland's success in managing COVID, I particularly want to give some of our German viewers today some context around this. So today in Queensland, there are no active cases. We as a state of 5 million people have had 6 deaths, regrettably, over the period of the pandemic, and we've had 1,160 cases to date. If you were to put that in a European context, a country like Norway, roughly similar population, 275 deaths, 15,000 cases. A country like Ireland, 188 deaths and 39,000 cases. Now, obviously, every country's response is different, and you know, we've been fortunate in Queensland, and we are lucky. But it does put into context the relative success globally of this state in managing the pandemic. So why is that, and how is that relevant to today's theme? I do want to highlight a couple of themes. The first is our health response has been highly networked. That is, yes, we've had a strong centre, and our Chief Health Officer, Dr. Jeanette Young, has done an amazing job, but we've actually had a distributed public health response across the state. In health districts across the state, we've had public health units, we've had active management of COVID, and it's that distributed and networked capability which I think has held the state in very good stead as the crisis has unfolded. And I think that goes to how are you resilient in a fragile environment? We have relied and valued expertise, and that's been critical. All of the government's decisions have been underpinned by health advice, which has been really important. We also have experience in managing disasters in Queensland. Floods, fires, droughts. This is a state that is not unused to managing these things. And certainly as a government, as a community, that experience in how do we operate in a crisis has actually really prepared us well for managing this unprecedented experience. We've also been able to act quickly and decisively. And when I think about the government's decision to close borders, which was controversial to say the very least, but one which was critical to our success in managing the spread of COVID in Queensland. When I think about the way we have responded quickly to contact tracing, to testing, etc., we've moved quickly, we've mobilised those resources and we've acted, and I think inaction would have been catastrophic. What we've also sought to do is to understand that there's not one rule which fits everything. And one of the key jobs of my task force was around how do we translate the health directions, the health advice, into practical advice that businesses can follow. So our COVID safe business framework, and anyone who's been to a business in Brisbane in the last 6 months will have seen the signs on the doors, etc. 56 industry plans covering almost every sector of the economy, developed in partnership with industry, applying the health advice to individual circumstances of those industries, tailoring it so that customers have the confidence to return to businesses, businesses have the confidence that their staff are safe and they can safely reopen. And that ability to tailor that advice, done in consultation with industry and respectful of the health advice, has been absolutely critical. Another thing that's really critical to our success, and I do want to talk to this a little bit more, is foresight. This state has, for the last 20 years, been investing in life sciences, in biotechnology, in biohealth, with a view to leveraging our research strengths, leveraging our natural environment to actually position the state for success. And that long-term investment is now paying off in the time of COVID. The University of Queensland is developing one of the world's COVID vaccine trials, and that is moving very rapidly. Today, I met with a Queensland life sciences company called Zing, and they have a rapid testing device, which is similar to a pregnancy test, which lab tests lead them to believe we'll be able to provide tests and test results in 5 minutes, and to actively attach onto the COVID virus and help to detect its presence. And indeed, they're looking at some fast-tracked work in the United States at the moment. The ability to have that capability to deploy to help Queenslanders and people around the world would not have happened without that foresight from 20 years ago. So we're really significantly advantaged to that. And in terms of our plans for economic recovery, the current government's plan for economic recovery clearly ties the health and the economy together. We cannot succeed economically unless we succeed in our health response. And I think that's been absolutely critical. And the government's economic recovery plan talks about the new normal that we will see after COVID. And we did a lot of stakeholder consultation with business and industry. And what does this new normal look like? Some of the things they said to us, well, look, the trend towards digitalisation and digital transformation, which was there anyway, has just been accelerated. New ways of working will open up incredible new opportunities for business and industry and for workers. E-commerce has increased dramatically, and already my own organisation is seeing new market access for our firms, particularly in Asia, using e-commerce platforms. Supply chains and supply chain management have just become even more important, and how that is managed. And there's been a renewed shift towards new energy, and that's something that Christoph talked about, and I'll return to that. So when we think about how Queensland has succeeded, I think there's an enormous opportunity here for this state as a safe destination, a clean destination, a green destination for new investment and new industry. But what we know, and this is critical to fragility, is you need partners, you need networks, you need collaboration to make that work. And that's where the partnership with Germany comes in. And Michael knows that this is something that is very much close to my heart and the heart of the government. And when I think about, Germany has the presidency of the European Union for this 6 months. And under the motto of Together for Europe's Recovery, Germany is really, championing a region-wide approach, a union-wide approach around the goal of making Europe stronger, more equitable, and more sustainable at the end of that. And just as Germany is committed to a region-wide and a global response, so too is Queensland. And I think Germany's ambition in particular areas like the digital revolution, like climate change mitigation, new energy sources, the transformation of the job market, similar challenges to Queensland, similar ambitions put by stakeholders, and I think complementary solutions that we can develop together. So we see our role in Trade Investment Queensland really as building those partnerships between Germany and Queensland and Australia and Brisbane to actually see how can we work together to explore those complementary opportunities for both of our countries to recover more rapidly, for both of our jurisdictions to build back better. So let me give an example. Our alliance with the state of Berlin, and Michael's been a strong proponent of this. What's really interesting is that alliance is based upon a joint declaration on health. Now, could it not be more timely to build close partnerships in the area of health? And our relationship between the Queensland University of Technology and Germany's renowned Fraunhofer Institute is a great starting point and an opportunity for further development. And as Christoph said, a free trade agreement between Australia and the European Union is a huge opportunity. Now more than ever, we see protectionist impulses around the world. You know, for us, free trade between partners of goodwill is an enormous mutual benefit. And we're really hopeful that that free trade agreement will be ratified in a way that benefits both the European Union and Queensland and Australia.
All right, moving on. To show us how an organization strengthened its value proposition during a crisis, we will now hear from David Gann here in Brisbane and Andrew Cramsey in Berlin. Both gentlemen are with RxMx, a healthcare company which was founded by doctors who refused to accept business as usual when prescribing new specialty medicines. David Gann is the Chief Commercial Officer at RxMx, and Andrew Cramsey leads the European operation. Please welcome David and Andrew, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. I'm going to wander around. I get a little bit pacey, but listen, RxMx is a digital company that supports the pharmaceutical industry, and we luckily had the foresight of, before COVID happened, of working remotely, and this is really around how we strengthened our proposition during the crisis and capitalized on an opportunity that was really once in a lifetime. So our company started in 2013. It was founded by 4 physicians, specialist physicians in neurology and immunology and radiology. And I joined in 2015 from a commercial side in the pharmaceutical world. The company was really, the idea that came from, I was working in the pharmaceutical company and I met the doctors through various sort of industry events. And the idea came around that we were launching a medication that was going to be incredibly challenging for physicians to facilitate and implement safely inside of patients. And they wanted to automate the process. So what we really thought about was, how can we do this with minimal effort, but using technology to support it in a world that really does not adopt technology quickly. The pharmaceutical industry is very slow to use this in the world, and so are physicians in a day-to-day practice outside of their EMRs. We set up in 2016 in the US, and then we set up in Germany, in Berlin in 2018. We've been very lucky to be able to leverage the landing pad in Berlin from the Austrade. And with pharmaceuticals, they're global companies. So we've been very lucky to be able to rapidly expand our footprint and our opportunities, because if you solve a problem for one drug in one country, you can solve that for multiple countries around the world. And we're very lucky to do that. So what do we do and who are we? We really do offer these technology solutions around these specialty medicines. I'll talk about specialty medicines in a second, but we offer these really, we've got a platform that is really highly configurable to support these physicians and patients. And these are all sort of probably industry terms, but we offer these patient management tools. We offer patient monitoring tools. We offer patient support. We offer patient reported outcome studies, which is a phase 4 clinical study. We offer these access programs, called familiarization programs, and all of our work is done completely in-house as well. It's quite novel that a technology company will do this, but we really consider ourselves to be a health company that uses technology to solve health problems. So we've been very fortunate over the last 5 years. I was the founding CEO and have stood down at the start of this year with, I think, it's somewhat of a blessing, being with the COVID scenario. But we basically started from a profitable position from day one. We've had no outside funding. We've basically been a profitable, and we've really had a lot of success over the last few years. The pharmaceutical industry, once you crack them, is a great customer and a great client, and they really are fantastic partners to work with around the world. We were fortunate last year winning the Health Export of the Year. Unfortunately, it was New South Wales, sorry. And maybe Queensland in the years to come, but we are also winner of the Fast Technology number 19, and we also won multiple awards in APAC across the last few years. We won Emerging Export of the year before as well. So we've been pretty lucky. Let's be honest, all this was pre-COVID. But there's something that really was different, that what we've done from the day one is that every single employee worked from home. We never really had an office until someone said, hey, I don't really like working at home. Can we get an office? And I was like, oh, I guess so. You know, we had an office, so we had a WeWork office, we had one desk, and I sort of went there from time to time. And then we went to Europe, and then we're like, oh, well, in Europe, you need to have a desk. So we've got a desk in a really small room right near the gates that we've actually been to, and there's like a little placard that has RxMx on it, but no one's ever sat at the desk. So the whole company has always worked remotely, which is, thinking at the time, this is great because we're not paying any rent, but I think in hindsight, you're thinking, well, look how smart we are. But the industry challenges are in the pharmaceutical industry and medicine are very, very complicated and quite different to any other industry that you work with. The physicians are very task saturated, and really, if you look at any articles that are published recently, and especially on top of, which is one of the big neurological conferences in the US, the lead flagship meeting was around physician burnout. And this is because the diseases are so complex, right? And imagine getting a new airplane and a rep coming in from Boeing and saying to you, this is how you drive the plane, you take off here and here's a glass of wine, and then you fly up this way and this is how you land it. That's the pharmaceutical industry explaining incredibly complex medications to physicians that then physician needs to remember. They get a product information, they get a CMI, they might get a risk management plan. They're supposed to remember that for the time when they see that one patient who fits that one profile or fits that right exact product. That is not sustainable, especially in the world where specialty medicines are changing and are getting more and more complex and more harder to realize. The lab tests are more complicated and the dosing regimes of these products are even more complicated. The lab results may be delivered by inefficient systems. So it takes 15 days for a physician to get a blood result via the mail, which is terrible, let's be honest. I mean, I've been to a doctor, I've had a blood test done, and I have called the doctor and said, do you have this? And he goes, I don't know. I mean, who else has been in that boat? We've all have. But the idea is that we wanted to automate that process as quickly as possible. We wanted to make sure that the medication and the non-adherence is essentially done and dusted, and someone can track them between the visits of the doctor, so the doctor is understanding of what's happening. And really, these traditional healthcare services that are currently done are outdated. So we saw an opportunity. So what's so special about these specialty medicines I've been talking about? Specialty medicines are known for having one of more or the following characteristics. They're incredibly expensive, they're incredibly complicated, and they're high touch. And when I mean high touch, they need lots of monitoring or lots of interaction or lots of ongoing support from the physician or their team or their clinic or their nurse to support them. But what we can see is that the FDA approvals of specialty medicines is actually on the increase. They're the new blockbuster. That's what all the pharmaceutical companies are moving into, these specialty medicines that make, you know, these niche diseases here and these niche diseases there. That's what the pharmaceutical companies are really looking at these days. They're on the rise, and increasing new drug applications increase the volume of prescriptions and spending of revenue. So this is where the market is really at. So when I talk about specialty medicines, that's prescribed by a specialist, so a neurologist, an immunologist, an oncologist. And when I talk about a non-specialty medicine, they're more about GP products. So something you'd get from your GP. It could be, you know, Rulide, which is an antibiotic, something like those sorts of things, or a statin. So what we do is we've created a platform, which is we call Chameleon, because it can take and look on any feel of what the brand wants to do. And we basically have a data exchange where we're connecting all the stakeholders. We're connecting the doctors through smartphone applications and their team through their portals. We're connecting the patient to the same network through the smartphone applications. The nurses have portals, the sales team have portals, and then we're connecting in different data sources. That could be from electronic medical records, it should be from a pathology company, and it could be from your Fitbit. Whatever the data source is, we funnel that into the information, and then we present to the data who needs it, to the person who needs it the most at the right time, for them to take an actionable item on as well. And some really fascinating insights that came out of it is that the doctors love smartphone applications compared to portals, because they hate going to a desktop, but they like doing it. I got a great story. One of the guys from America called me. We were at a conference when you could go to these things, and he came to me and said, "You're the guys that created this program and for this company." And I said, yeah, this is, you know, thanks very much. He goes, "I absolutely love this program." And I said, "Oh, great." He goes, "Can I tell you a story?" And I said, "Well, why not, mate?" And he said, "Well, I was sitting on the toilet and my phone buzzed, and basically I got this alert for a patient who had a low platelet count. A low platelet count basically means is quite fatal. You could die from ITP basically in 1 to 2 days. This was a known side effect of this product. So the physician looked at it. He then could see, he could track the patient's platelet counts over the last sort of 3 or 4 months. He could then look at the patient's phone number, and basically he texts the patient from the toilet. He then texts his nurse from the toilet, and he could basically solve a potential fatal issue in real time, not 15 days later when it normally comes in, while on the toilet. And he said, it was great. I didn't think about it until that actually really happened. And that was a real life application of how this saves time and effort. And you can see now that COVID's come along, it's really started to change the way that physicians are thinking about this sort of stuff. So we empower the physicians to administer specialty medicines. We basically, our technology monitors the patient safely. We break down the barriers to adherence. We also make it easy and fairer access to complicated medications for all patients. Because believe it or not, some physicians don't always prescribe the best medication for the job because it's too complicated. That is real, that happens. These are some things that we're basically, we often talk about the multiple wins that we talk about, but I'll probably skip over this one in just more of the interest of time. So pharma and medicine in basically in our business in 2020. Andy, are you on the line?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can.
Excellent.
I'm in control of the slider. If you, I think you've got some graphics here. Are you on video?
Just a couple of points. Yeah. So if you wanna, the first point there is what have we been doing in Europe, specifically in Germany? So I'm currently sitting in sunny Berlin. And the first point is really that Europe is the spiritual home of pharmaceuticals. There's lots of headquarters around Europe. I think the last time that David and I were traveling around Europe, obviously a long time ago now, it feels like years. I think we spent time in Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Barcelona, and also spent some time in Basel as well, and all over just a couple of days. I think Basel itself is also the quintessential pharmaceutical European experience. You get out of the airport and you get the option of whether or not you want to leave the airport in France, Germany, or Switzerland. You then take a short trip into the city, and the city is divided by the Rhine, and on one side you have Novartis World, on the other side you have Roche World. And so it's been a fantastic benefit to us to be able to have staff here in Europe and to be able to move around like that and to get in front of clients so easily. The second point there is, if you want to bring up the second point, and that is the basic numbers. A quarter of the pharmaceutical revenue is in Europe. It's a substantial market segment. Obviously, the US is the big prize, and it's disproportionate compared to all the other markets. But Europe, there's genuine revenue here. There is a huge amount of advantages. So first of all, with the first step, you can get the strategic advantages. Then you bring in the financial advantages of having staff here in Europe. The third point was RxMx is any company who works in healthcare, it needs to be compliant centric. You need to worry about how you're ticking the boxes. You are dealing with patient information. You are dealing with highly sensitive information. You're dealing with sensitive doctors who are very aware of compliance as well. And so Europe is a great testing ground for us for that. Obviously, Australia has great compliance, but specifically here in Germany, it is really the next level. So if you bring up the next point, the number of times we've heard this has been remarkable. If you can make it in Germany, you can make it anywhere. So Germany and Europe has arguably the highest levels of regulatory compliance requirements. And it's not just the regulatory requirements, it is also the users, the doctors and the patients. They also expect that is the level of compliance that you have. And so we've been able to use that to our advantage. We've been able to build that into the evolution of our company on the internal sense, so we can externalize that in compliance checks, which is a significant advantage for with pharmaceutical clients. The last point there is that within Europe, we've been able to have a really diverse and highly skilled workforce. We now have 6 staff in the European office. They speak, I think, 9 languages across the 6 of them. I speak 1.5 at best. So it's been a really great advantage to be able to draw on that group of skilled people here in Europe.
Thank you, Andy. I'm going to sort of continue on and talk a little bit about what happened in basically one of the major challenges of our 2020 pandemic sort of moments so far. We had one of our clients who relies on patients being blood tested every month, and they send out home phlebotomy people to these people's homes. They literally send them into their homes. They had to draw blood from them every single month, and they'd do that for 5 years after they had this medication. And then that vendor, one of the biggest vendors in the US for home phlebotomy, went bankrupt because basically no one was getting blood drawn at their home, thanks to COVID. So without any notice, they basically said on Friday, we're not operating anymore, good luck on Monday. So we basically worked really closely with our client to set up a temporary home phlebotomy vendor. We integrated them into our system. We rebuilt the day-to-day operation so it was interrupted. We communicated and coordinated all the patient care, and the patient data wasn't lost. And the business proceeded without any interruption for our client. And that was a real case of where the team really dug in, put in the hard yards, and really we were able to overcome in the challenges basically on a Friday, and we could reboot the whole system on a Monday. We've now found a new home phlebotomy vendor, and we're managing basically the system over to them. It was a really big win, but it was one of the biggest challenges that we've actually had. And we saw it not just as an opportunity to support our vendor, but we actually saw it as an opportunity to innovate as well. And now we're on a separate path to be able to send blood draw kits to patients' home so they no longer need a home phlebotomy clinic. And we've been pitching this idea for probably 2 years to our client to do it. And they wouldn't do it, and they wouldn't do it. Then COVID hit, and all of a sudden they're like, that's a great idea. And so now we've actually gained a whole new basically division of where now we've worked with a local phlebotomy company to create and innovate this new tiny tubes testing to send kits to their homes, create the video, create the educational content for patients to be able to do it themselves, and then send their bloods back in. Not for everybody, but definitely for a large part of the population as well. Pharma is really changing. You know, the value proposition I said at the start was really about the drug reps going into the doctor and trying to educate. They no longer can really do that at scale. You know, I started my career as a drug rep, and that was the job. You basically sit in a doctor's office, you wait till they have their lunch, and you go in and talk about your product. You can't do that anymore. They don't want to see you. They don't think it's appropriate. You shouldn't be in their clinics, and especially in these areas like Victoria, which is really locked down. So they needed to find another way. Technology is the answer and is the only answer. And basically what we do is we provide the education to the physicians. We wrap around the product information. We wrap around the product information to educate the physicians on how to prescribe these complex medications through our system as well. And they also get this visibility into the patient's health and treatments beyond the visits, between the HCP visits. So Bus, this is actually the biggest year we've ever had. This is an absolute record-breaking year for us. We've brought on more clients than we've ever done. We're 75 people. We've got lots of jobs open at the moment. You know, we've won more contracts with brand new companies because they've heard about the innovation and excellence that we've brought to our other clients. You know, and basically we're sitting there well positioned, and it's not too dissimilar to the previous speakers. Like, we've got a solution, and all of a sudden it becomes even more exciting and even more available. And that for me is a really great position for us to be in 2020. So our plan is to continue on more international markets. We're operating now, it's hopefully into the UAE and Egypt and to the Arab markets. We've got lots of, which is good for yourself, T. We're operating now into AI and machine learning for picking up adverse events earlier and making sure that they get reported. We're integrating more smart devices for more patient adherence and integration with medical devices for remote monitoring as well. So I'll stop there. It was quick, it was brief, but hopefully I've kept the time, and I'll leave it for any questions. Thanks. Excellent. All right.
So I have a question. Like COVID as a medical challenge, how did it impact your portfolio? You talk about a lot of generic problems.
Yeah. So yeah, we actually created a COVID solution. It was called COVID Clear. So we saw an opportunity. So basically when COVID hit, we took this deep breath when we were all watching ABC 24 hours a day, right? And we were all like, what are we going to do? And we thought, well, the clients all had to realign. The pharmaceutical companies had to go internally and sort themselves out before they started talking to us. And we thought, oh, could we actually make a solution for COVID? And we did. We called it COVID Clear. We created it using the same platform. We rebranded our platform. It's our own platform. We did a great piece on MSNBC. So we actually got the new CEO, George, to actually do an interview with them. We had great hits, great promotion. And so this was a US only sort of play that we were working on, because I didn't think Australia was really going to roll into it. We got a pilot with, I can't say it, with a big medical device company, which was somewhat successful. But at the same time, the prices for COVID Clear were going like this. And all of a sudden, the demand for our core product was going like this. So we dumped it pretty much overnight. We said, we're done. Let's get back to selling what we're used to doing. And yeah, we just basically, we had a look at it. We put something together, we got some business, and then we're like, you know what, we can actually do a lot better here. We charge a lot of money for our patient, our services, in comparison to what we were going to get for COVID. It was going to be like dollars, like $1, $2 per patient, where we can add so much more value to the pharmaceutical company. So yeah, we really pivoted. We looked at it, we did something, and then we just dumped it. That's what happened. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
So our next speaker here on site not only has a reputation as apparently be very convincing, but also as a highly energetic power woman and a language tech entrepreneur. She's the founder and CEO of 2M, Australia's fastest growing language services and technology provider. She's also the president of the Australasian Association of Language Companies and chair and driving force of the Queensland chapter of the German Australian Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Please welcome Tia to the stage.
Interpreting, 1945. Simultaneous interpreting, Nuremberg trials. Interpreting, 2005.
Kinds affairs. Modern technology is altering our world in ways that would have been impossible to fathom when the United Nations Charter.
Interpreting, 2012. Consecutive interpreting this time. Interpreting 2014, right here on our doorstep, G20 in Brisbane. Not even a year ago, 2019, interpreting. Pandemic hit. An industry was decimated overnight. Conferences canceled all over the world. Interpreting jobs canceled all over the world. Interpreters all over the world lost their job overnight. Interpreting October 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how interpreting looks today. On your screen, you see the CEO, Mike Henry, of the world's largest mining company on our screen at home. Up on the right-hand side of the screen, you see interpreter number 1, Patricia, in Brisbane, in our Brisbane office alone. On the left side of the screen, you see interpreter number 2, Cecilia, in Argentina, Buenos Aires. And then also at home, also alone. And then you have the remote attendees logging in from all over the world. So what is RSI? RSI is remote simultaneous interpreting, a platform that allows to run multilingual events online with the support of professional simultaneous interpreters. Everyone, participants and interpreters, can all be based remotely. So how does it work? Let's have a look. You've got Mike Henry in this case on the far left side, the English remote presenter. His feed, his English audio feed, feeds into our RSI platform and feeds to those English remote attendees, English, Australian employees of BHP in this case, or Americans, who chose the English channel. Mike Henry's feed also goes, as you can see on the top left corner, to language number 1, which is the Spanish booth in this case, but it's not a booth because you saw them. Patricia is in the Brisbane office, in our Brisbane office, and Cecilia in our Argentinian office in Buenos Aires. And they're working together. The Consul mimics and the conference interpreting Consul, they hand over all the functionalities and they're working together. And same with the next, languages you can have, obviously up to over 10 languages. What about other industries? Not everything is about conference. What about healthcare and legal? Same thing. There we have 2M Lingo, and we can have interpreting through a mobile phone or a tablet. So you can have the interpreter coming through the laptop or mobile phone, just from home, as it happens. So what about growth? So here we are. 2M's turnover increased by 49.5% year ending June 20. Quarter 4 was 99.71% increase in sales, and June alone accounted for 110% growth. And the first quarter already of this financial year accounted for 74%. What about scale? We have 1,354 NATI, which is the National Accreditation Authority for Translators and Interpreters, certified interpreters onboarded on the platform, which is an increase of 58%. Staff numbers grew, as you can see, from 12 to 24, 2,500 BHP employees logging onto the RSI platforms, and suddenly it was used in courts, hospitals, town halls. It is seminars, virtual summits, board meetings, and domestic and international. We just ran last week for a current news magazine in France, in a virtual conference. So what did it take? Because like everyone here, it is about what did it take to leapfrog? How did we do it? Well, it's an ecosystem, right? As we saw the frog. We believe in API-first technology. We're platform agnostic, and from the most important thing is that we can integrate with other platforms, be it Teams, WebEx, Mikogo, GoToMeetings, telehealth platforms. So the API first philosophy is the most important. In-house engineering. And then we went and thought about, we choose our key customer. So this is something I can really recommend. Take your key customer, one of your key customers who trusts you already, and implement and grow from them. In this case, with BHP. And then from there, we went to the next sector. We work in mining resources a lot, medical technology, but also in defense. So the Australian Defense Department. We've heard this. This is nothing new. This seems to be a growing theme, right? We had to speak. You remember? I mean, all of you and everyone online here today, it was a crazy time. It was reacting fast, recruiting staff, headsets. I mean, hands up in this audience, who tried to buy a good quality headset suddenly in times of lockdown? And we have very specific requirements of, when you saw the interpreter at home, it's not Wi-Fi, it's Ethernet cable, what the technical requirements are. Train the interpreters, onboard the clients. What about new workplace health safety policies? What about acoustic shock? Guidelines for distance interpreting. I mean, the whole context changed, and that NBN, of course, anyone, who had internet problems. Courage. Another theme. So I'm not the first one who says that here. Yes, of course you have to take risk. Be courageous, but invest in people all along, not when it's raining, as we heard, Paul Sampson saying, fix that roof, right? Invest in technology all along, invest in integration and strategic partnership. And this is now, I am talking after we've heard, all these big companies. We're an SME, right? So collaboration is the new competition. Not everybody has a back room full of developers. So strategic partnerships are important. And this is something I grew, and we, the team, grew for years. I have been on that international circle of the localization industry, which is my industry, for many years, since the Gala conference in Monaco in 2012. And these are, you know, these are partnerships, they don't come overnight. But when it's raining, you need them. So collaboration's a new competition, remember this. Capacity building, of course, staff recruitment, the training of project managers, platform engineers, interpreters. We ran webinars and PD sessions through professional associations, be it the Australian Institute of Interpreters and Translators, all across. We went and did guest lectures, Monash University, Macquarie University, RMIT University of New South Wales, on remote interpreting. Onboarding of interpreters and clients onto the platform. You wouldn't believe how many people lose their Apple ID and that technology. I mean, the myriad of details. And what about that remuneration? Suddenly the context has changed. You have to think of that. And we heard from Alex before, and I agree, you know, what a great place to work, you know? I mean, you know, we send out hampers, you know, we had lockdown hampers, but I like this, you know, have your wish list of what you have. So yeah, remuneration, we had to also think, because this was a new context. To leapfrog successfully, think about the stakeholders. Because, okay, so you might be ready, you might have had everything we just talked about, but is your market ready? Our market wasn't ready, right? Because we didn't invent this overnight. No, our R&D, courageous R&D department, we have been developing this for a couple of years, but the market wasn't ready. The firewalls of the hospitals here in Queensland have an issue. They can't get the internet. The courts, and we have government contracts with the courts in Queensland Health, but they wanted physical presence of the interpreters. So the market wasn't ready. Suddenly the market was ready. And what about your supply chain? So who's our supply chain? Interpreters, right? So there was a lot of judgment. Interpreters didn't like the remote simultaneous interpreting, right? They thought that was the easy jet, the Jetstar. It was the low-cost version. And there was a lot of fear. If suddenly an interpreter anywhere can do it, well, then all those interpreters in low-cost country will get the jobs, right? So they hated it. A lot of interpreters, it was their fear, it was a threat, right? And we heard about threats before. That's a very interesting aspect. But suddenly the threat became a lifeline, you know? And help with technology, I have to say, you know, and I'm an interpreter myself. Conference interpreting is an extremely high cognitive effort. Remote simultaneous interpreting is an increased cognitive effort. So we helped with the tech. We went and bought headsets. We sent headsets to Argentina. We said to interpreters to come into our office. We created a hub. We held their hands and we recognized their challenge. A little bit fact and figures. This is our industry. Interpreting, this is not localization or translation. $7.6 billion US worldwide. Bring it down here. So the demand at the Royal Melbourne Hospital, video interpreting appointments increased from 10 to 15 appointments per month before COVID to 100 to 200 a month. That is, and this is already old now, you know, a couple of months old. This is one single hospital. And then you can see Australian Defence Department switch to RSI. Common Sense Advisory, which is an international research organization on our industry, you can see how it plunged at the height of pandemic, which is the on-site conference interpreting, and the on-site healthcare, even more huge plunge. And no surprises here, video remote interpreting is going up, and same with the RSI. Right, so the lessons learned. I talked about the ecosystem. For us, it's the API first integrate with other platforms. Speed and courage, and we've heard that a lot of times. Collaboration, especially for those, you know, and my heart goes out for all of you colleagues and peers who are running small businesses. You know, collaboration is the new competition. Partner up. Check that your supply chain is ready, invest in them. Check if your market is ready, and if not, help them to get ready. Because this new way to do things, as we heard, is here to stay. In this case, obviously, the RSI. And lastly, purpose. Is it aligned with your purpose, right? Our purpose is we create accessibility. We create access to language. And this is what we do as a language technology provider. You know, language technology provides access to language. And to conclude, obviously, I can't help to quote an Austrian philosopher, right, who famously said, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." And I have heard Michael, you know, quote him many times before. So creating accessibility here abolishes the limits. So here we are, contributing to a world of inclusion. So whatever you do, it's got to be aligned with your purpose. So thank you. My name is Tia Dieterich, and you know, I'm proud to be the CEO of 2M's fastest growing language service and language technology provider. Today, our head office is in Brisbane still. We have offices in Melbourne, Paris, Argentina, and Manila. And I look forward to seeing you back on the panel. Thank you.
Any questions from the audience here? Microphone, thanks.
Hi, just really interested to hear your perspective on how over like the next sort of 5 to 10 years you see your industry transitioning to be essentially automated. Is that feasible, or yeah, what's your take on that?
Of course, and this is fascinating, and obviously not only interpreting the translation side with neural machine translation, which is very promising. Machine translation, and again, we started with rules-based, then we had statistical, then we had hybrid versions, and then about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, neural machine translation, which is based on natural language processing, which sounds a lot more natural than what we had before. It's not always correct, especially those German speakers, you know. We've got great results. But those little rhetorical words like etwa and, you know, zwar, you know, DeepL, one of the stock engines, for example, you know, conveniently leaves out. It's very important. As we saw, language technology creates access to language. So it's so important. And machine translation is an important productivity tool. So yes, of course. And project managers, instead of doing clicks, we don't want project managers to do clicks. We want them to be there with the client consulting. You're going, I heard, into the Arabic market. The Arabic market is very complex. You need to know what you're doing. If you're localizing, you know, what you take out, what you don't, you know, which locale you're going into. So skill sets are changing, you know. So yes, there is automation. The project managers are becoming more linguistic consultants, and the translators are becoming domain experts. So what we are doing is we're combining the technology with subject matter experts, you know, unless it's marketing, and there it's obviously the copywriters, which we call transcreation. So massive shift, very exciting shift, and more content than ever before is being translated at the moment. So it's an exciting, you know, so again, it's not what one see as a threat, you know, it's just a myriad of opportunities. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Any more questions? No? All right. Plenty of food for thought. Thank you. Next from Sydney, technologist and digital health enthusiast, Dr. Sylvia Pfeiffer will join us. She's originally from Germany and came to Australia in 1999 to work as a research scientist. In 2006, she created her first startup, and she then joined after a couple of years Mozilla and later Google. in 2018, she launched Coviu, a telehealth software platform for healthcare businesses. Welcome, Sylvia.
Hello. Hello and greetings from Sydney. I'm excited to share with you today a story of anti-fragility of my company, Coviu. So Coviu only exists today because of the persistence of its founders. We have a constant drive towards simplicity and scalability, and this has led ultimately to our growth through the coronavirus crisis. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Sylvia Pfeiffer. I'm one of the founders of Coviu, a telehealth company. I've got a PhD in computer science from the University of Mannheim. I don't do much technology work anymore, but as a CEO, that's what happens. In 1999, I came to Australia for a postdoc position at the CSIRO. Let me just stop Slack jumping in. So came to Australia in 1999 to work at the CSIRO, and since then I've actually worked for Google, Mozilla, and again for the CSIRO. Coviu is my second startup here in Australia. Admittedly, my first one totally failed, but that's what happens often. I had to learn a lot as a research scientist. This second startup is now doing very well. And one of my claims to fame is that I actually wrote a book about telehealth before the COVID crisis. And it's been helping lots of healthcare businesses go through the digital transformation during the crisis and cope with the stress of the last 6 months. My company, Coviu, sells telehealth software that is purpose-built for healthcare businesses. It supports the workflows, including taking payments and reimbursements. It also supports clinicians with special medical tools that they need when doing online diagnostics. So specializations, different allied health GPs and specialists need different tools to do telehealth well. And we have built a adaptable system to make that work. We are on a mission to make telehealth better than being there. Better than being there in the same way that Tia's done it for interpreting, and we're looking at healthcare in the same way. And we will do whatever it takes to make that happen. Our history actually demonstrates a creation of anti-fragility. We were originally a research project at the CSIRO. And having seen the impact that telehealth can have on individual patients through some of the projects that we did there, we decided to keep pressing on and not just let it die as a research project with a couple of research publications, which unfortunately happens a lot in research. Instead, we wanted to turn this into a life-changing product. Now, making the transition from CSIRO research project to a spin-out is not easy. With lots of persistence, we raised the capital that made that happen. But capital alone does not create a company. You might find this surprising, but it's amazingly difficult to get healthcare businesses to see a difference between a general video conferencing platform, such as Zoom, what we do right now, and a custom-built solution for their business. We were persistent, and that persistence actually paid off last year when we were chosen as the solution for Health Direct. Health Direct is a company wholly owned by the Australian federal and state health departments, and is offering solutions to state and federal health users. So particularly recently in the hospitals, the public hospitals in Victoria, it's been helping with outpatient clinics. So we're very proud of that help. So this has all created the foundations for Coviu becoming the government's answer to telehealth during the coronavirus crisis. On the 13th of March, the Australian government announced near universal Medicare reimbursements for telehealth items. It was a key tool to address the need for isolation of patients from infection. We saw immediate huge uptake by practitioners across Australia. So we sell to small businesses as well as large healthcare businesses. And the first and immediate big uptake was actually by the small businesses. GPs, allied health practitioners and specialists alike jumped on the opportunity to try out this new way of delivering healthcare. And so did their patients. Within 2 weeks, we scaled from doing 400 consultations a day, which we thought was pretty good at the time, to doing 25,000 consultations a day. That's over 6,000% growth in 2 weeks. In the last 9 months, so over the last 9 months, we grew from about 1,000 users to now more than 65,000 users. We can quite clearly say that the digital transformation of healthcare is now certainly well underway. But that wasn't always so. So telehealth was actually a very slow growth market, as you can see, anything before the 13th of February or even 13th of March. The normal in-person means of seeing clinicians worked actually really well in this country. And so there was very little need for moving to the digital space. That suddenly changed with the virus, as you can see here. So that big curve here is the number of Google search queries for the term telehealth. And that simply exploded. And it's even now still larger than it was before the crisis. And Coviu grew at a similar pace. So we had the same kind of explosion. This is our Coviu page views. We managed to grow exponentially without too many issues because we were prepared. We could have been fragile and fall over, but instead we raced to the challenge and we adapted. 3 key areas are the reason for our success. So this slide here shows how our technology scaled. We had a couple of outages, admittedly, but we persisted and we fixed software bugs and we came back ever more scalable and stronger. The second area that was responsible for our success was our team. We grew quickly from 7 to 25 staff and are actually now at 35. We're a remote first team. We couldn't even have done anything but remote first because we only had 3 seats in Sydney and now had 20 staff. So we couldn't fit the team physically in the office that we currently have in Sydney. While most of the new staff came on board to help out for a short time, they all loved it so much they actually stayed. The challenge of the crisis had actually created an amazing team culture. Everyone started from the same stage of not knowing anything. Everyone had to work together to learn quickly, and they all stepped up to the task. So today, I'm really proud of our amazing team. The third area that was responsible for our success was actually our financial preparedness. As a startup, that's not always the case. Sometimes you live from month to month, but we had set up Coviu such that we had a couple of months worth of money in the bank. And we had set up Coviu for self-sign-up of our customers. So our customers could just go to the website, inspect the pricing, put in their details, enter their credit card, and get started using it. So everything done within 5 minutes. Most telehealth software companies don't do that. Most telehealth software companies, you have to call up, have to negotiate, and then you get an account. So it's that setup of the automated credit card transactions actually saved us because money just started flowing in, and because the money came in and we were starting to spend it on more people, etc. That all allowed us to scale and dynamically scale through the crisis. So finally, let me give you some insights into concrete changes that we made to improve our anti-fragility and scalability. On the sales side, we moved from doing one-on-one demos with each one of our customers to doing webinars. Some of the webinars had up to 1,000 clinicians participate. So that's a scale that we couldn't have reached without that move. On the customer support side, we introduced a phone call center and scaled up the text chat team, which allowed us to respond to up to 800 conversations a day, up from 10. The obvious system that we had to scale was the technical infrastructure. And because we were already placed within AWS, that was actually the simplest part of scaling. We did so beautifully. What was also important was that we had full control over our technology in the engineering department. Having built the full solution in-house, we were able to address bugs without delays and reduce any outages to a minimum. Finally, we also managed our cash reserves well and even attracted further investors. So now that you know what we've done at Coviu to improve through the crisis, my question is, what is your pandemic moment? What is it that you want to achieve? What are your ideas to make an impact in this world? And what if the world suddenly changed and took up your idea in droves? Would you be anti-fragile enough to rise to the challenge and scale your movement? Well, I'll leave you with that thought, and thanks for giving me the chance to share my story.
Thank you for your insight, Sylvia. Do you have any questions from the online audience coming through via the Q&A feature? You still there? There we go. Did you get any questions online?
No, but I didn't. Sorry, are you talking to me? I didn't get any questions. I can't see anything on Q&A. Are there any questions from the floor?
Anyone here? Nope. No further questions. Thank you very much for sharing.
Sure.
So let's dig a bit deeper and talk about the principles of leapfrogging. The following discussion and panel will be led by Dr. Yvonne Ranisch. She runs Octalo Negotiation, a consultancy which helps organizations with their negotiation strategies. Yvonne, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Thank you very much. May I ask the panel members to the stage? We have David. Sylvia is joining the panel online as well. Alex, do you want to hop on here? We have Tia.
Hybrid all the way. I like it.
Are we good to go? Sorry, are we good to go?
Yes, we are.
All right, okay. Thank you. Good evening from the New South Wales South Coast, where I'm based. Well, fantastic. We had some great discussions, some fantastic presentations, and I certainly have learned a lot in this few hours from all of you. It's interesting. We've heard a lot of success stories, and when we talk about leapfrogging in times of crisis, what I think our audience is very keen to understand: how did you handle these adverse conditions? What were the biggest hurdles to overcome to get to where you are right now? Let me start by asking David.
As you can hear me. We used to do an event called Pizza Fridays.
Yep.
One of the biggest challenges we found once everyone worked at home was finding a global vendor that could deliver pizza to everybody quickly and effectively. That was one of the hardest challenges. As one of the things that we like to do from a team point of view is bring people together, and obviously this was one of the most impossible thing to do. I mean, I think last year I spent 4 months of the year traveling, seeing everybody, meeting everybody, but and not having that face-to-face contact. And I've spoken to a couple of people about this, is that our business, although it be it today, we're doing very well, I feel we'll actually feel the effects probably mid next year. We get a lot of relationships and contacts from conferences where we go and speak to the pharmaceutical companies about the new drugs they're bringing and presenting. So for me, the biggest challenge is going to be in the future because, you know, we're capitalizing on relationships, but we need to form new ones, and it's very hard to form new relationships digitally. And I think that for me is going to be one of the hardest things moving forward.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. What about you, Thea?
What we just heard, yeah, to forge partnerships digitally, it is difficult. I do feel like I have done non-stop traveling and relationship forging for the past 8 years internationally. So I was actually really able to leverage of that. Look, it was heartbreaking to see what I showed you before when that industry decimated literally overnight. And my background is I'm trained, you know, as an interpreter myself, and to see my colleagues across the world just to literally have all their jobs wiped out was incredible. Which the same time that hurdle, Yvonne, became what the theme that is today, anti-fragility. That was that motivation to really, you know, the hardest thing was something that helped us to really go. And because what I come back to what a small business has the hurdle of not having necessarily the funds of technology powerhouses behind you. That is, like, honestly, that is hands down the biggest challenge for most SMEs today. And that's only that strategic partnerships, which I mentioned before, can help.
Now, tell me, what sort of excuses were you hearing before the pandemic? We can't, you know, let's say, for example, we can't work from home, or this is not possible. We have to meet these people face to face. So what excuses would you have heard before the pandemic that this doesn't work, but it's now working? Sylvia?
Oh, there was plenty of excuses.
Yes?
From the healthcare professionals, usually the excuse is, oh, I can't touch them, touch my patients, so I can't diagnose them. It turns out most specialists never even touch the patients when they're, you know, other than in the operating theater, follow-up conversations, you don't usually touch them. And we've heard stories from patients that have traveled 2-3 hours from the backlines of Queensland just for a 5-minute follow-up conversation with a clinician. Sometimes actually they travel for days because it's not actually easy to get to Brisbane. It's mind-boggling how much clinicians were more thinking about themselves and the impact it would have on their processes than the patients. I don't want to say everyone is like that, but and I also don't want to blame them because clinicians have a lot to do, and so for them anything that makes it easier to get through the day and to see more patients obviously makes it more efficient for them. So their first thought is not about how much travel is it for the patient to do it. But that whole situation now has changed, and the patients are now aware that they can get remote consultations, and that makes a huge difference, a huge big difference.
So it has been a mindset change.
Absolutely.
And do you think now that's, you know, where we are at now, we will not go back? Or will this become the norm, or will we once, you know, we have a vaccine and COVID is going away and we have a, you know, different life again? Do you think that we will move back to where we were before?
I think that's up to the government, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I believe if Medicare reimbursements for telehealth become the standard and become permanent, things will stick around because patients will do it. Clinicians see that there is commitment from the government for telehealth ongoing. They will invest in upskilling their teams. The healthcare business will invest in upskilling their teams, will invest in the technology for their setups, and it'll change the way that they're thinking. Right now, there's two types of people. There's the ones that have dabbled in it and have actually changed the way that they work. and have adopted the technology and have seen the advantages of it. There's some people that are really excited about the changes it has brought: flexibility for the patients, flexibility for staff, flexibility for themselves. And actually new commitment by the patients to the healthcare business as well, because the healthcare business has been flexible and adapted to the needs of the patient. And then there's the other part of the healthcare businesses that have decided to just sit it out. Oh, I've earned enough. I can just sit out this pandemic. 6 months later, it'll be over. And now it's 12 months later and it's still not over. And they're starting to have to think about, is this permanent? Is this something that will need to persist? But I still think once the vaccine comes, and let's say the vaccine comes within the next 6 months, and the government decides not to extend Medicare items, I think there will be a huge step back from telehealth and a step back into face-to-face, because healthcare businesses that cannot reimburse for it don't have a financial incentive in doing it.
Okay. Thank you. Also, by the way, what I also forgot to mention, that if anybody has questions, please bring them up also online if you have any questions for our panel.
By the way, it would be really, really poor, really bad if we did that, if we let go of this progress that we've made towards the digitalization of healthcare, not just for Australia and for Australians from an access point of view, but if you compare internationally, other countries will pick it up and will run with telehealth. And so if we don't do telehealth, then other countries are going to service our clinicians, and it's not going to be a level competitive field anymore. So I'm really passionate about the government changing Medicare items to be permanent.
Yeah. Now, Alex, I would be really interested also to hear from you. You know, in your presentation, you've told us about the changes you have done, you know, due to COVID. Do you see your company moving along with what you have changed now, or do you see yourself coming back? Are you going to do a hybrid?
Yeah, no, we've already made those changes permanent. So we, when we sent everyone home, everyone was home. As people started dropping back, they came back, and we have say a single-digit number of people that now permanently work from home, a single-digit number of people that permanently work from the office, and everyone else wants like to do a 1 to 4 day type of thing, and they come to the office to socialize, have a drink, do a board game, collaborate with others, have discussions and workshops, etc. And like, it's going to be extraordinarily hard to send everyone home, because there are clearly people who want to come to the office, and it's going to be impossible for us to force people into the office. So we, again, it's complicated, but we turn it around and we see it as an opportunity, because if we're the first tech business here in Australia or in Brisbane that really nails it, that again is a competitive advantage for us, right? So we think the hybrid is the way forward. We want to keep this. And then some other things like when you're trying to develop business relationships with companies like Microsoft or Google or something like that, the common wisdom is always you have to step on a plane and go there. Well, that common wisdom's just been thrown out of the window, right? So 2 days ago, I signed a lease for an office in Seattle that I've never seen and won't be seeing for a while, that has people working for us that I've never met and won't be meeting for a while. And common wisdom is you can't do these things, and now all of a sudden you can. So that won't go away. Like, if it works, you know, why do you step then for every single bit on a plane? Like, you know, I can sit here under palm trees and parrots outside, and you know, the world's good.
That's the work.
I don't want to go back to like the frequent flyer Qantas and knowing international air flight staff, and it's like, why? Like, this is not good.
Now, Alex, because of you know, what you've just told us, that you know, you're having now a hybrid model in your office, you have changed the approach on how you do business. Has your leadership style changed? Do you feel that you need to adapt as a leader in the business?
Absolutely. I think there's, so we've already put a lot of emphasis into not hiring people that are what's commonly referred to as control freaks. So we have a very autonomy-driven culture where we put a lot of power into we have cross-functional squads. So every squad has, 4 different functions represented, and they do the unit of work. We don't have any person telling them what to do. They have to figure it out themselves. So that leadership style lends itself to be a bit more hands-off. Some people, as they hit the organization, they have a bit more of an urge to sort of be closer to their people, and they have to change to a certain extent. The accountability piece changes because you not check in of a coffee corner talk anymore, but accountability now needs to happen more formally in weekly one-on-ones if it's remote. So there's definitely changes in the leadership style, and we kind of were lucky that we were so small that we didn't have a leadership team before COVID hit. We actually had to build it while COVID hit. So we had to develop the leadership team and the skills like right throughout this pandemic. And, we had to remote hire some of them. And so, it was easier to assess how they were coping with those changes, I guess. And so far we haven't had any catastrophic mistakes, I believe. Not yet. You always learn in hindsight, right?
Absolutely. Now, Tia, you have made massive changes in your business, and looking at your staff and your team, how you manage your team, do you also feel that your leadership style has changed, that you had to adapt the way you were handling things?
Not really. Our industry, the localization industry and the interpreting industry, a lot of them worked in general. This is internationally already from home. We obviously, we have offices and they were coming into the office. So in general, our industry has, the change hasn't been that. It's more the change, and in terms of leadership, I have a rock star of a COO, so the biggest shout to really my CEO, Helena, who manages to keep everybody engaged through daily team. We had daily stand-up meetings, right, which she organized. People got up, she got everyone to, say what they're doing. So she has, that really is, those kudos really go to her. She kept them. Yes, we did the lockdown hampers, I said before, but it was really, this is really, I don't know if she's listening or if she'll listen to the recording, but it was her, So I didn't really have to, I'm very lucky because I give my leadership to her and she multiplies. So talk about return on investment. When you got those gems, she multiplies and puts it to everyone because they're really important. What has changed, and I love hearing Sylvia's passion through there, right? Before, I'm equally as passionate about this, the remote simultaneous interpreting. This is going into universities. This is changing the way universities are teaching interpreting, right? We went in there as guest lecturers, but degrees will be different. The whole curriculum has changed and will be changing. So there's a massive, I love innovation. Same with the machine translation question we had before. Thank you, Jasper, as well. These are massive opportunities. This is here to stay and nobody's taking anything away from you, right? It is just shifting the skill sets to use the precious human mind, instead of doing some clicks, which we can automate, So yes, the times are gone from translators who can translate. Die Katze ist schwarz, the cat is black. We don't need a translator for that. We've got machine translation for this. Interpreting, we've got now the distant report. It'll take a little bit longer until we have automated interpreting, right? Because that would entail speech recognition, machine translation, and then back, from text to speech. But yeah, so you watch university degrees will be changed forever.
Very impactful, fantastic. Now I've got one online question here, which one question from an online attendee, which I'm going to read out to the panel. Going online means that we've started exchanging lots of personal data over the internet. How have you dealt with the different data privacy laws in Australia and in Germany? David, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, we live this every day and have done.
Okay, I thought so.
Yeah, it's a minefield, to be honest. He's not on the phone anymore, but you know the GDPR is just an unruly beast into itself that you've got to be compliant with, to the point where you can't store patients' names with their actual current disease, so they can't actually be stored in the same server. So it's really complicated in that sense. So we follow GDPR in Europe, and we follow HIPAA in the USA, and obviously that we have our own privacy policy in Australia that we follow quite closely. Health data is different to probably some other information that you guys would collect, I'm sure. But health is incredibly sensitive data, and to the point where, you know, we take the highest level of encryption. I mean, our business is very different to a lot of other people's business. We don't advertise to the users of our system. The people who use our system don't buy our system. The doctors don't buy our system. The patients don't buy our system. The pharma company buys our system. So we are under very strict instructions and very strict guidelines that we can't share any PHI information with the pharma company, so they don't get any information at all in terms of identified information. And we don't sell that data. We don't use it for anything other than basically de-identified reports and metrics. So yeah, we take this stuff incredibly seriously, and this is one of the biggest opportunities for our business to fail is a leak of personal and health information.
Okay. Now, thank you. The purpose of this panel also is this evening to share something practical with the audience, something that they can take away from today back into their own businesses to leapfrog themselves. If they haven't done it yet, what advice can you give someone who's sitting there and thinking, how can I scale up? How can I leapfrog? Sylvia, would you like to share some advice for the audience?
Sure, absolutely. I think technology is the key these days. That all of the stories we've heard today, they all included technology and the adoption of technology, which also is something that sometimes we're very hesitant to pick up new technology. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of new technology. Give it a go. Technology is definitely what's going to make your business more scalable. Whatever you do, make more scalable. I daily think about how I can more automate what I'm doing, you know. Make everything you do more scalable just a little bit every day through a new online tool, through processes, through automation, whatever it is. It will automatically happen. You know, you will become more anti-fragile or less fragile.
Thank you. Alex, do you have one key takeaway?
I think, I mean, this is one so I was born in Eastern Germany before the war came down, right? And then, so I was born with a GDR and a Polish passport. And I don't know which one was more useless, but they were both not worth a lot, right? So I remember, like, in the early 80s, martial law in Poland, Russian tanks being on intersections, which I found cool, like a tank, right? But my parents explained to me this is not cool at all. So 10 years later, when the wall came down, it's sort of, I was a competitive sports. I was training, like, really, like, I was a few seconds off world record in 50 breaststroke and things like that. And I was like, this was my thing. And all of a sudden, the country that I grew up in ceased to exist. In 99, I lost a lot of money. In 2008, like, every single one of those crises, it feels like everything around us just basically disappears. And in every single one of those crises, I've realized that there's a short moment of, like, you're disorientated, you have no idea, you know, what's going to happen next, but everything continues revolving. So it's a matter of, like, staying calm and collected, sort of, you know, taking it week by week, day by day. Starting to realize the opportunity in all of those things, because if I've learned one thing, that out of every crisis, there was something good coming out of it. Not for everyone, of course, and I've seen like a lot of careers destroyed, lives destroyed, even out of every single one of those crises. But if you see opportunities early enough, then there's something good coming out for you. So not submitting, or not basically just like, you know, just delving into the doom and gloom and sort of, you know, everything is bad around you, but sort of trying to understand, okay, well, what's changing? How's it changing? And, you know, what's gonna, who's gonna benefit from that, and how can I be part of this? So that's in the past been probably a good way of thinking, and I think this time that, for me at least, worked out as well.
Yeah, realizing the opportunity, absolutely. That's you know, that's the theme of being anti-fragile, right? What can you take out of a crisis to become stronger? Tia, did you want to add something for the audience?
Sure. I'm right there with Sylvia.
Yeah.
Technology is the most single economic driver of the future. So I completely agree. But just one hint from me: let it go if you have something, you know. We've all had, so there we had, you know, and we tried this technology and we paid for it, and then we just hang on. Sometimes, as we say in German, wer mitschwingen möchte, muss auch loslassen können. You know, you gotta let go. Sometimes you might go this one way with technology, and you just cut your losses and go to another technology, you know. There's trials. So really mark my words, you know, even though you've already invested in it, just, you know, go to the next one. Let go. Learn to let go.
My daughter loves that movie as well.
David.
The thing, the number one thing I would say, or I'm going to say two things, and I don't disagree with anything that you guys have said around technology and adoption. But you still got to be authentic, and you still got to have fun. You know, you can't, if you're in a room, you can still have fun. If you're on the phone, you can still have fun, and you can be authentic. You still got to keep that reality of check that, you know, people go to work to make connections and enjoy themselves, not just to punch out the numbers. Yep. And that's what we have always tried to do. We always try and, you know, there's lots of random channels on our Slack thing around, you know, the co-workers, which is full of dogs and cats, and the random channel, which is full of pictures of the moon and just random stuff that people like to post. But it's just the other stuff. It's the Pizza Fridays. And we have last year, before any of this happened, we have it's called the Zoom Awards, because not everyone, we're not rich enough to fly everyone to one place, but we can basically get everyone on the Zoom call and give out awards, and give out stupid trophies for their efforts at the same time. But, you know, we try to have fun and half the people in our company have never met the other half, and that'll always be the way, but they all feel like they know them and they can have a joke with them. And that's something that I'm probably most proud of. And we've done that all remotely since day one.
Quick question. Will you share your secret? Who is the company? Who is the Pizza Friday company that you're using?
That was my challenge. I could not find a pizza company to deliver.
Oh.
That was
still not found any?
Grubhub's pretty good, but they don't do US. And,
yeah.
Yeah, it was a challenge. But Pizza Fridays is a great hit.
Did they all have to eat pizza at the same time?
You just literally send them a pizza. Yeah, you say be home Friday at 5 o'clock. Something's coming, and you literally just send them a pizza, and it's Pizza Friday.
But are they all eating pizza at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah. Then they post photos of them eating pizza. Yeah.
Breakfast, night, wherever you are, whenever it turns up, that's when you eat it.
Yeah, and it's evolved now because people want special types of pizzas. So you accommodate the salad likers and the sushi people, and so it's evolving. It's not as random as it once was, but it's definitely, you know, you've got to cater for it. But then everyone posts the pizza they now want to get and what they do with it. And yeah.
How do you do time zones in that?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Just get on whenever you can. Yeah, with drinks, there's people like, say, the Zoom things, like there's people in Germany drinking at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and there's Australians at night. Yeah, legit. You never say have a drink. There's not too many people worry about it. We did it last year. We did it from New York, and I was in New York for it, and we had, you know, maybe 20 people in the office, and we had everyone else on the line, and everyone just got a beer and had a champagne. And
great. Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you very much. And definitely, David, thank you. It's really important that we all also have fun. We can have fun, whether we're in the same room or I'm sitting here in New South Wales and you are up in Brisbane. It's all possible. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Yvonne, for doing the panel. Thank you very much. So to wrap up this whole program, there is so much to take on from my personal point of view. I have my short list of personal takeaways, which I'm happy to share. And I would also like to actually ask or take Michael on my side, because I'm pretty sure, there is a bit of overlap, but your list is probably complementing a lot of what I have on my list. So undeniably, technology is one of the biggest drivers. So there is no way around it. Technology and digitalization, you simply cannot ignore it to pretty much exist or to be future-proof. So that's pretty much from every single presentation I took away from. That's one of the biggest things. A second one is the mindset of the company or the leadership style within a company. You need to be courageous, but you need to be also empathic to get everyone on board, make quick decisions, and be there and be present. So the mindset and the character you pretty much bring on board can make or break a company in regards to make quick decisions, not to overthink too much, to get the people around you on board, to get customers on board. That's one thing. And that probably leads a little bit into the next one, relationship and partnership management. If, as Tia said, if your suppliers are not on board, you're screwed. You're not going anywhere. You can be ready, your company can be ready, your customers can be ready. If your suppliers are not ready, you're not going anywhere. So if you invest in really good relationship and partnership management, that goes a very, very long way. No matter what size of the company, small, medium, big, that really does go a long way. Another one is probably the multi-scenario. Don't just set on a single strategy and think that's the one I'm going for. Be prepared. There might be plan A, B, and C depending on what's happening next month. When do borders actually open? When we're able to travel to do things person to person, and when are not? What if that's not happening for the next 4, 8, or 10 weeks? So just be prepared for more than one scenario. Be a bit more flexible and more agile. And one of the last ones I'd like to share is previous crisis definitely hardened. So no matter what you have experienced previously, if you have been through a crisis, it certainly helps to prepare you to go through the next one, no matter what kind of crisis it is. Michael, what are your thoughts?
Well, it was a very good summary and it was a very good MC role. So from all of us, thank you so much. Kayla has done a great job. That was very entertaining. So I agree with every word you said. I put my structure together in terms of where do you come from, where you are, and where you want to be. I think when you've got the kind of culture that Alex has, it's great to benefit. And I understand you're one of the most desired places to work for in Australia. It's this morning. I saw the tweet that Clipchamp is the or one of the most outstanding companies to work for in the whole of Australia. So from all of us, congratulations. So when you come from a place like this, it's probably easier to activate the right mindset. Second, Paul talked about fixing the rules. So if you have an attitude of having everything in a great shape, then you approach with a lot of health. And healthy people fight crisis better than people are not healthy. And I mean, crisis experience, Paul Martin talked about this. You might be lucky or you might have never had a crisis. So it's something you can't engineer. Then how you react when it hits you. We talk about anything today, from lockdown hampers to shutting down car factories and anything in between. The willingness of someone like BMW say, we close the factory in 5 days. Super decisive, yeah? So to be decisive on scale. is something very important. But also, I mean, David, I like what you said. We decided to give it a go. We tried COVID solution, but it might have worked, but there was no money in it. So we evacuated it again. So a lot of trial and error because it's a territory. We have no experiences. We give it a go. QT gave it a go to teach online. We are happy now to go back to the physical world as soon as we can. The day the COVID crisis hit us, Uber called Pet Barn and said, if people are at home and they still need dog food, can our Uber drivers deliver pet food? And we just give it a go. So it's what I call the opportunity appetite. I think technologies are available for everyone. Just not everybody has got the same opportunity appetite. And if you approach the crisis with a risk appetite, only you won't leapfrog. It's the opportunity appetite, I think, that differentiates those organizations who leapfrog and those who don't, when both have access to the same kind of technology. And of course, cash flow. I think Sylvia talked about the cash flow. Yeah. So if you can fork out a few dollars, well, then you can send them whatever monitor they want at home. If you hit a $100 million crisis, well, then you probably are very frugal and don't put milk in the fridge. So it's also a question where in terms of monetary assets come from. And then finally, future. If you read a textbook on strategy, it talks about a 5-year plan. Today, we don't know how the next 5 weeks look like. We don't know, as Paul Martin said, if the border to New South Wales is open. If I'm Alan Joyce, I make 80% of my revenue, roughly, I guess, from domestic travel. And I don't know if on the 1st of November, this will make a big difference to my revenue or not. So all of a sudden, I think very differently, and what I call kind of rapid strategizing. But my time frame is measured in well, weeks or months and not in years. And the idea of a minimum viable strategy, it's good enough. We have minimum viable products, and we saw them a lot. Minimum viable strategies are probably non-existent. I think that goes back to what you call the alternative strategy. So these are my kind of key takeaways. Comprehensive topic, but outstanding speakers. So we all collectively learned a lot. We have a Lord Mayor who now wants to create an anti-fragile Brisbane, and I hope you all had a bit more anti-fragility to your own professional and private lives. So that was a really entertaining afternoon. I'd like to thank you, Michaela, as well. You probably also have some closing words.
Yes.
So I'll leave you with this, but from all of us, thank you so much, Michaela. You've done a tremendous job.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank everyone here today, particularly speakers, panelists, and everyone who attended, obviously, in person or online. We hope that the program has met your expectations, and we look forward to seeing you very soon, online and in person. Enjoy the rest of your day. Auf Wiedersehen nach Deutschland. And everyone here on site is welcome to stay and enjoy some networking drinks and stick around for a little bit. Thank you.
And just very, very quickly, so of course, I'd like to thank again our partners, so the Chamber, Thea, Michaela, Ron, and everybody who contributed. Of course, GABA. Leon, thank you so much for your entire support and for being with us. GABWA, the German Australian Business Women Association. I hope that Ines, Catherine, and others joined us today. Rob Harrison, who might be still there or not, who was in Munich, but GABC helped us as well. I'd like to thank the entire QT audiovisual team. So we leapfrogged, and I think what you saw, like a hybrid panel moderated by someone who's not even in the room, something we couldn't have imagined 12 months ago. Having a panel discussion with 2 car manufacturer providers not here. Christoph, thank you so much. I think with 5-minute notice, speakers sent you slides, arranged phone calls and Zoom conversations. So you have been very, very agile and flexible. Thank you. And to all our volunteers, in particular, Claudia again, for everything you've done to make this another 5th success story. And of course to our sponsors, Siemens Australia, Stiebel Eltron, and Philips. Much appreciate your support. So as Michaela said, spend the next 60 minutes on networking, drinking and eating, and have an enjoyable evening. Thank you so much.